And what up, everybody? Welcome in Wednesday episode of the show. Chris, it feels like Thursday for some reason, man. I feel like this week is rolling, and I know I'm feeling that feeling of it's going to be Friday, and I'm going to be like, we haven't finished everything we need to finish, because there is a lot going on. There's a lot going on in Gamecock Nation, a lot going on Gamecock Central, which is, I mean, let's be honest, it's a great thing, but we are rolling right along, barreling into the weekend. The openers always go like this, in my opinion. You wait, and then it's like you snap your fingers and it's game day, and then you're like, are we ready? This is probably how coaches feel too, man. Like, you have all this time to prepare, but you really don't. So Gamecocks getting ready for Georgia State. Coordinator speaking today. By the way, I think we've kind of started to settle into a rhythm on the GC Live game week shows. We'll get you some final details on that. But I think we're going to try to kind of settle into this rhythm. A Monday show with me and Chris. For those who didn't tune in, you missed out. Mike Yuva with the 7 p.m. Tuesday show. Our plan right now is for throughout the season. That will replace our afternoon show on Tuesday. Mike will be on there. That will be kind of more of a Q&A type show. Wednesday, we'll always have coordinators speaking on Wednesday afternoon, so it'll give Chris and I plenty to talk about. Final preview show will always be on Friday. And I think, Chris, I mean, y'all weigh in the chat. I think Thursday makes sense for our guest, actually. That's what we're going to do this week. We got a great Georgia State guest going to join us tomorrow, Thursday, 2:15. We're going to aim to have a guest for the opponent every single week if we can make that work. But anyway, man, Chris, lots going on. How we doing?
Man, we are wide open. Like you said, I was just telling you before we came on the list of stuff to do. If you and I unfurled or unleashed our list in written format, it'd be like a scroll back in the old days. It would just keep going. But, hey, that is a great problem. I don't see it as a problem. We just got to get it done. Lots of stuff to do. I even just thought, I said, oh, there's a content piece that we do every year on a Friday, sometimes on a Saturday. You and I haven't even talked about it. Not once. Breaking down the keys.
Yep.
That's a regular piece. We'll do that. But yeah, things are awesome, man. Tons going on with some recruiting developments. And obviously the team with the season right around the corner. I feel the excitement continuing to build. So good times here in Gamecock country.
Yeah, man. The Gamecock Central YouTube, which is what most of you watch this show on, has taken off. So hit the subscribe button. Matter of fact, most of you are pretty loyal. Like, we see a lot of the same names on YouTube that comment anyway. Hopefully you're already subscribed on there. But hit the subscribe button on YouTube. That helps us out as far as consistency, as far as it letting you know when we're live, it letting you know when we post new videos. I would say we've like quadrupled our production as far as YouTube video content. And actually, at some point during the show, you will have to be subscribed, not to Gamecock Central, but to the YouTube to comment. It's completely free. We're not pulling anything over you. Just hit the subscribe button. That's going to save us also from some of our drive-by commenters who like to come on and spam the chat. So I'm not going to turn that on today, but probably by Friday, we'll turn on the must be subscribed, the comment button. But all you have to do is hit the free subscribe button there on YouTube. We're going to get rid of the drive-by chatters who like to just come on and talk shiz. But coordinators, also some big NIL news for South Carolina coming out earlier this week. We want to talk about that. We were lucky enough to be joined by Hillary Cox on our 107.5 show this morning. We want to talk about that and what that means for South Carolina. This is some news, Chris, they've been working on for quite some time to get it into place. It comes together. I don't think the gravity of what that news really is for South Carolina student athletes has quite kicked in or locked in yet to Gamecock fans. So I want to get into that a little bit later on. But first, coordinator speaking today. Let's start with maybe Marcus Satterfield, offense, and let's combine it with depth chart talk. I don't think, Chris, you and I have been on here since the depth chart was released. Initial offensive thoughts, post Satterfield comments today, and post depth chart release, Chris.
The depth chart was interesting, particularly a few little notes. So number one, kind of made it official that Dylan Wanham beat out Tyshawn Wanamaker, right, for that right tackle spot. I think that's what we expected, Wes. But my question was, would this be an or situation, right? Like, was it that close? Is there a potential rotation? And not to say that Wanamaker won't get some time there, but I think, look, Dylan Wanham, he's had a couple pretty major injuries during his career at South Carolina that's really held him back. I think a lot of Gamecock fans have kind of wondered, okay, Dylan Wanham, this guy was highly ranked recruit. I think they've been expecting a little bit more, but part of it is honestly, he hasn't even played as much as he should have played because of those injuries. And I would say Wes hasn't been as effective as he could be through no fault of his own because of those injuries. So that was a little, kind of smaller battle that we were watching out for. Wanham, it looks like, I don't think he opened the preseason, if I'm remembering correctly. I think Wanamaker was out there number one, but it didn't take very long for Dylan Wanham to step in, and it looks like he's got a hold on that and playing pretty well. Receiver was another interesting one. I think we knew, what did we pick out? Maybe we identified, I think, 6 or 7 guys that were going to be for those 3 spots or so, personnel depending. And then those would be kind of your rotation guys. Well, my question was, what does the depth chart going to look like? And look, Shane Beamer said, guys, I looked at the depth chart. I didn't spend 2 hours poring over it. He even said, like, give me some leeway, cut me a break a little bit on the depth chart. If, game 1, series 1, it's not whatever you saw atop the depth chart. We do know that they've got several different personnel packages, so it will depend. Hey, we like Antoine Wells here in this matchup. We like Juju McDowell here in this matchup. Jaheim Bell here. But I did think it was interesting. Just kind of confirmed Xavier Legette being, at the top of one of those spots. Juice Wells being an or. Didn't know, hey, will he be a starter? Will he be an or? Will they just put him as a backup? We know he's going to play a key role. I thought, Wes, maybe the most interesting thing was Jalen Brooks being listed as an or. I know you wrote in one of your Carolina Confidential pieces recently where I was able to learn from you that Jalen had some moments in preseason since returning to the team. And so he was an or with, I believe, Josh Vann, who, of course, was South Carolina's leading receiver last year. So some interesting kind of depth chart moves there. I don't know that means a lot in the grand scheme. It's more of just how they're listed, but I think it kind of confirmed that there's some tight competition and a rotation there.
Yeah, well, if you listen to the Clayton White press conference today, which you should go watch it. He actually implemented a what's the word? A moratorium, maybe? I don't know. I don't know if I'm using my that's not in my word of the day for today, but he basically said we can't use the word depth chart anymore. He was tired of hearing about it. Tongue in cheek, of course. Clayton, a pretty funny guy, but it is funny how much, Chris, the coaches downplayed the depth chart. But let me kind of fire back at them a little bit in that. Okay, y'all. No, I get it. I understand we can't watch practice like we used to. But if we were out there watching like the Spurrier days, then yeah, the depth chart would mean nothing. We'd be like, well, this guy's practicing a lot more than that guy. That guy's over there at the scout team. And yeah, it may have been thrown together to an extent, but it does matter. Like, it's fluid. I get it, but there's a reason Dylan Wanham is listed ahead of Tyshawn Wanamaker. So yeah, maybe we can go a little too far with it. Maybe we can dive a little bit too deep into it. But if we're not going to be at practice, like the NFL guys, again, no complaints. I get it. I'd love to be out there watching. I'd love to have a drone and just watch the entire practice, honestly. But if we're not going to be out there for a long period of time and we're not going to see the rotation, this is all we got to go off of. So I will give Shane Beamer that leeway in that we all understand there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching, I think. The interesting thing, as much as they downplay the depth chart, it actually kind of, I believe, shows on paper it matches with the feedback we were hearing, like receiver. And see, they actually, Chris, I was working on some like final depth chart predictions because I thought it was going to come out on Tuesday like it did last year. It ends up coming out Monday night. And I sat there I poured over the receivers because I was like, how are they actually going to list this? And then Colin and I, when we were doing the GC Live on Monday, the second half when you were in DC, we even were like, maybe they just put orders for all the guys. And, we were like half kidding, but half like, that could really be the case. In particular, I thought or for AB and to carry on was a strong possibility. I thought or for Leggett and Juice Wells was a strong possibility. Didn't necessarily anticipate the Jalen Brooks one, even though the interesting thing is when we listed, it's not like a pat on the back. It's just this is what the buzz was. We listed 6 or 7 guys, and it was those 6 guys and then Rucker, who would 100% be in the mix pushing for time, if not for health. So as much as the depth chart's being downplayed, the fact that it's listed like that, I think is very representative of what we're probably going to see Saturday night. We're probably going to see early in the year. Eventually, I kind of fall in like the cream rises to the crop. The cream rises to the top. Let me get that right. Category. We'll find out, right? Like the targets will be based on who's getting open and who's catching the ball. But I think based on everything we've heard about camp, everything they've said about camp, these 6 guys are going to be on the field. Maybe it's even 50-50 on Saturday, Chris.
Yeah, it could be. And speaking of our YouTube explosion, Wes, I envision cutting that segment. Wes Mitchell fires back at South Carolina coaches. We put a thumbnail with you on it, making some serious face and like a fire emoji and all these kind of things. That would be awesome. That would be big time clickbait. You were not firing back at all.
Depth charts do matter. Like these
they do matter. Well, look, I mean, here's another one. We probably would not have predicted like after spring ball, some random time in the summer. Maybe you did. If you did, great. Nick Emmanwori and DQ Smith being number 2, both of them being number 2. Like you probably could have leapt there and said, I think Emmanwori probably, but that tracks, going to the defensive side of the ball, that tracks. Here's the interesting thing about the receivers and just some of the offensive personnel in general. Those receivers are different type guys. So like when you get AB may not play 60 snaps a game because he's got a skill set where you're going to use him in a certain way. And I always have said since the bowl game, he had 5 catches in the bowl game. It was his best game as a Gamecock. And it really showed how he should be used in this offense, right? You get him in space, you move him around a little bit, and he can run. You probably want to send him on some deep routes sometimes, but you want to get him in space with the ball in his hands. That's different than what Juice Wells is going to bring. And Juice Wells is going to be a good bit different than Xavier Leggett, who's a big physical presence at receiver. Like all these guys are different. It's not like they're rolling out 6 or 7 clones of each other. All these guys can do some different things. And that's why, aside from the competition being pretty tight, I think that's another reason that you see these or designations, because it really is going to depend on personnel. They have specific person, for instance, they'll have specific play names or personnel names where they call it out. It's an all-in-one deal. So, the players know the personnel and the play, and some of them are, specifically designed for Jaheim Bell or Juju McDowell and what spot they're supposed to be in and what's supposed to happen. So I think that's a part of it too with the depth chart.
Yeah. And that caught my attention when Satterfield was talking about that today. And just the comments about, hey, we got some guys. It was kind of interesting. He'd be like, we got some guys that are 6'3", 220 pounds. And I was like, oh, he's talking about Xavier Leggett. And then we got some guys with some speed and I'm like, oh, he's talking about AB. Like it was, you could almost kind of walk along with him which guys he was referring to. It feels like, and this is a thing that's going to be, I don't want to say difficult to implement, but walking this line between using the guys to complement their skill sets while still keeping some form of identity within the offense, while still keeping a flow within the offense to where you're not just having to constantly shuffle guys in and out. Having a feel play to play, down to down and distance situations, while also implementing things that fit those different skill sets. That to me, Chris, will be like the tightrope walk that will determine just how good this offense can be this year, because I do think they feel really good. If you have Jaheim Bell split out in the slot, kind of as a receiver, but he's obviously a tight end. You have Leggett out there with him. I mean, that's going to give you an edge on the perimeter as well in the running game, I think, as far as having some big bodied dudes out there to block for you. So I think there's going to be elements in here. If you're two tight ends, if you're going two tight ends and you're trying to run the football, maybe Leggett is in the game at wide receiver on one side. But if you're trying to like spread this thing out, get some speed on the field, maybe then it's Van, AB, and Wells on the field. Like that's your three wide right there. I think some of that is going to depend on not just play to play, but like drive to drive. What are you trying to accomplish because of the certain game flow of where things are right now? It's a good problem to have in a lot of ways, but that's sort of that's the beauty. And then that's like the pressure of being an OC that now has some guys to work with, I think, is having to deal with that. How are they going to use Jaheim Bell this year, man? I mean, we talked about doesn't it seem like the Jaheim talk has been a little quiet on game week?
It has, because I think people are so
it's assumed, right?
Yeah, and I think people are hyper focused on a new quarterback that just so happens to be Spencer Rattler. So it's not just any quarterback, in the receivers, and even like the return of Marshawn Lloyd. And of course, he was back the back half of last year, but like his chance to be the guy, I should say it in more clear terms there. But yeah, I think like you said, part of it is just the assumption. Okay, Jaheim Bell, we've seen what he can do, but there's more he can do. Like we saw what he can do against UNC. We saw the jet sweeps. We saw the deep balls. We saw the run after catch ability. A thing that stood out today that Satterfield said, and I'm not putting too much stock into this because I don't think it's the plan, as he mentioned, Jaheim Bell can carry the ball 25 times a game. Now, yes, I believe that he can because of his size. I don't think he'll carry the ball that much. I don't think he's going to carry the ball 25 times a game, but he'll carry it some. And that is one of the most interesting subplots of all this, Wes, is, how much is he utilized? Do we see Dakereon Joyner at quarterback any? Like at some point in the season, I think, will it be game one? That's another interesting question. But I'm very interested to see how much kind of running back or a running back-esque position Jaheim Bell plays.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of excited, man. We used to do our buy or sell on here. Word on the street is we're adding the buy or sell back to our 107.5 show.
Okay.
We're going to have some interesting topics on that, I think.
Heck yeah.
But let's buy or sell right now.
Okay.
Initial, just like your reaction. Dakereon Joyner takes one snap at quarterback this week on Saturday. You buy it or you sell it?
I'll buy.
Okay, buy. I'm buying it too.
Yep.
Jaheim Bell carries the ball 4 times or more out of the backfield. Jet sweep doesn't count. Jaheim carries the ball 4+ times out of the backfield this week. You're muted all of a sudden.
I was hoping you were going to say 6 because I had my answer ready. I don't know. I was trying to read your mind and failed. 4.
4 or more. So
4. Yeah, I know. I'll buy. I don't feel great about it.
I'm buying them both as well.
Okay.
Because, I mean, CBS has been banged up. And
yes, that's a good point.
So, and yet, Beamer said he's working, he probably going to be available, whatever. He's a running back, y'all. Like,
hey, go play on a hurt lower body, nah.
Yeah, I think we're available is one thing. But if I have Marshawn Lloyd healthy, if I have Juju McDowell, maybe top 3 most underrated guys on the team, I have Jaheim Bell I can give the ball to. I have Joyner I can put at quarterback and run with the football. I have Rashad Amos Vasi, I mean, it goes on and on. I'm not putting him out there until he's 100%. So, I think that maybe opens up some things, short yardage for Bell to go ahead and make some plays at running back this week.
Yeah,
I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, that was a great point. I thought about the possibility or the probability of not having Christian Beal Smith, or at least, Wes, you wouldn't think he did much of anything if he even plays, and I really wouldn't anticipate him doing that. And that does give some more carries out. Now, hey, even if you got a completely full stable, we could sit here and argue and wonder about Jaheim Bell carrying the ball 4 times or more. You obviously want to find him as many touches as you can, as long as it makes sense to give him touches in a certain situation.
Yeah, so we'll save more buy or sell for Friday in our hopefully official segment there on 107.5. I think that's about it for Satterfield worth kind of diving into, Chris. He did say he said 8 or 9 guys on the O-line they feel good about. He said these other guys are going to Wanamaker will play. He's previously mentioned Trey Jones will play this year. I got to think Ja'Kai Moore is maybe in that conversation as a guy will play. So that'll be interesting to see too. Are there rotations on the O-line this week? Do they mix a guy in there, or do they just try to keep the same 5 out there, as far as keeping some continuity at those 5 positions? Let's go defense, man. There were at least two things that caught my attention, Chris. First, when I think back to the issues on the defense last year, struggling to stop the run, consistency in stopping the run, this whole Mo Kaba thing, and we've kind of anticipated it at this point, but he is officially the starter. He's a starter at Mike. And he was asked, hey, what does Mo bring to the field? And for one, he said Mo was like born to play football, which is if your coach is saying that about you, it's a pretty good day. But he kept talking about his physicality, his size, his physical traits. And I don't know, man, like the more I think about it, the more it feels like there are some, I don't want to say differences in how they're doing things defensively, but it just does feel like maybe there's a little more emphasis from a personnel standpoint. And, they have more options there too. Don't get me wrong. A lot of it was out of necessity last year. But I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say here, Chris. It's not just talk that they know they got to stop the run better. And I think sort of getting Mo ready to be the dude there in the middle is maybe a big part of that overall goal.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's an area they've got to improve in. And I think there were just kind of like some of the offensive struggles last year is a multifaceted thing. A lot of times it's easy to simplify it and say, well, a team's having trouble stopping the run, the D-line's getting their butt whooped, or, something like that. Just make it, just kind of dumb it down. When in reality, you've got 22 guys on a football field. Every play has 10 storylines within it most of the time. And so they do have to get better up front playing the run, no doubt. But also, I mean, we've documented some of the issues at linebacker last year. And I think a big one was, Mo Kaba was still, as a player, not completely ready. He took, I think, 100-something snaps last year. He played some snaps, and obviously his physical talent's undeniable, but he still wasn't ready. Whether it's 100% coming back from the injury from high school, whether it was just the light not coming on quite yet, the experience, whatever it may be, it wasn't there yet. Obviously losing Sherrod Green in the Georgia game. You're basically playing the year with 2 linebackers for all intents and purposes. And Mo Kaba is physically probably the most gifted linebacker on the roster. And certainly when you look at his athletic ability stacked up against what we saw last year, it is an upgrade. Now, that means you have to go out there, and Clayton White alluded to, you still got some things to learn. So there might be some growing pains for a Mo Kaba, but just the physical ability of being able to get to spots faster, that's the type of thing that I think could help this defense a lot. So it's a really significant development that he's taken such a step forward.
Definitely, he threw some love at Boogie Huntley today as well. That's kind of, again, matches the buzz. kind of like what we had heard. I did think it was interesting, man. Brad Johnson wins the job beside Mo. I still expect Shirai Green will play quite a bit. Will be interesting to see how much Debo Williams plays. Will be interesting as the year goes on. Can Stone Blanton insert himself into this mix? I've heard he looks the part, still a freshman, but bright future there for Stone Blanton as well. I just think you got to feel a pretty good bit better about that position overall than you did probably at any point last year, even going in, before Shirai got hurt. I think you just feel a good bit better about it on paper. Going to be counting on a lot of freshmen at defensive back as far as the backup roles go. You mentioned Emamori earlier, DQ Smith, both those guys, the local guys, winning the backup safety spots, at least for now. But, you look, Kawan Banks in there as a backup cornerback, third string cornerbacks, Keenan Nelson Jr., Emory Floyd, Chris. I thought that it was noteworthy the amount of praise that Clayton White put on these freshman DBs. Doesn't it seem like coaches are normally a little bit hesitant to heap too much praise on freshmen? And he did not hold back at all. I think that's a good sign for that group down the road.
For sure. And Wes, I don't want to get too far ahead, but Pete Limbo as well, mentioning freshmen and saying that they're going to have a ton, I think was his quote, of freshmen playing on special teams. And I know we'll get into that more in a minute, but it's an important point when you're talking about Clayton White mentioning the freshmen and Pete Limbo mentioning them. Now, he didn't say DBs, but when you look at the skill sets and what's needed to succeed on special teams, you would think that a couple of the guys he's talking about are Nick Emamori, who's a big, fast, physical kid. Seems like a natural fit for special teams. Seems like he's one of those type of guys that, as Pete Limbo said, has earned it. DQ Smith, who's another smart, physical kid. Good fits for special teams. And certainly you got to feel really good. I don't know that in February 2022, we weren't sitting here saying, okay, DQ Smith and Nick Emamori, like they're probably going to play a good bit this year. I don't think I was saying that. I mean, we saw Emamori in camp. We saw what he did as a senior. I always liked DQ Smith because I felt like he could successfully transition to a DB from high school quarterback. But I think they've gone kind of above and beyond the expectations for a typical true freshman. And I wouldn't be surprised if, opening kickoff, those two guys may be out there, covering a kick. But certainly when you look at that freshman group, White did heap some praise on him. I think the guy you mentioned, Stone Blanton, that's another one to watch. But I think there's been a lot of praise directed, even if they're not named specifically, at DQ Smith and Nick Emamori.
Yeah, and I would say maybe early summer, Emamori it was like everybody started kind of buzzing about him. But then DQ, I mean, golly, man, to go from high school quarterback, transition right in, and then again, you can say what you want about the depth chart, doesn't matter. It matters that DQ Smith is listed on there ahead of guys who have been here longer and who have played the position longer. It is noteworthy. Like it does matter, I think. And that's a good sign for that position in the future, I think, because you have two seniors at safety. Ideally, Chris, don't you think if you're Torian Gray and you're Clayton White, you want to get these guys in there now, like as soon as possible? Because at some point you are going to need to get them in. You don't throw yourself around at the safety position in the SEC and not get dinged up. Like you're going to have bruises, shoulders, I feel like, from DBs, especially safeties and linebackers. Those are two positions you get banged up, and you want to go ahead and get them in, get the sort of ball rolling as quick as possible so that as this year goes on, you can legitimately build that depth. But man, the other thing about, you mentioned February 2022, if you go back to then, there probably was some legitimate concern within the walls of the ops building. Who's going to be the backup safeties? Who are going to be the backup corners? It seems, here's the quote from Clayton White. There are some talented guys back there. These guys put on a show this August. That's what caught my attention. Those guys put on a show this August. I'm just going to be honest with you. They came ready to work right out of high school. They put the work in this summer on Zoom meetings. Put it on the field. They have physical makeups and football IQ you can't coach. They're going to be really, really good football players. He didn't talk about specifics, who he was talking about, but he was talking about the DBs. That's who he was asked about. He has piqued my curiosity beyond just Eamon, then DQ. Now I'm ready to see some of these other guys too, Chris.
Yeah, and I think even when you go to the guys, like several people either here or on the Insiders Forum have asked about Anthony Rose, right? Just as an example. I mean, remember, Eamon, DQ Smith, they were not among the highest ranked guys here, from the 2022 class. That was Anthony Rose. It was Keenan Nelson Jr., Kawan Banks, who's pictured there on your screen, Wes. He was another lower ranked guy, and he, incidentally, is probably the guy who's gotten probably the third most praise and love and maybe even in terms of snap count in practice, just based on the very limited sample we've seen. But you've got Rose, you've got Keenan Nelson Jr., you've got Emory Floyd. All three of those were 4-star guys, I believe, in the recruiting process. And we haven't heard as much about them, but that always kind of makes it difficult. Like now, because of how much attention these guys get during recruiting, and Wes, you and I contribute to that. I recognize that. Yeah. It's always like if a guy is not on the depth chart as a true freshman and was highly ranked, you're going, oh my God, what's wrong? Is he not developing? No, different guys, different pace. So like a guy like Anthony Rose, tremendous physical talent. And I think he's got a chance to be really good, but just not quite there yet. Just different paces for different guys. But when you look at, I think Smith and Eamon have probably taken a bigger leap faster than maybe we anticipated, but that's not a bad thing. I think that entire group that they signed, it looks like a pretty promising group.
Yeah, and I've always been a fan, man. Quarterbacks, if they have a physical makeup, which DQ does, that's one thing Robin Bacon told you a long time ago. Like, hey, this kid has the physical makeup to go make plays, is willing to be physical. I love the mentality of quarterbacks coming into other positions. And you're certainly talking about a guy who probably had a baseline understanding of coverages in terms of DQ Smith because of his time on the other side of the ball at quarterback. So it'll be fun to watch those guys, man. That's one of the things I enjoy most about this job is watching the guys film in high school, interviewing a guy in high school, seeing them in person, and then watching them develop, watching them get the opportunities. And then, you hope that they can actually go take advantage of it and be in a position to help the team, but help themselves personally as well and put themselves in a position to go to the next level. One more quote. He said, let's see, where'd it go? This is Clayton again. I don't want to get too crazy. This is when the coach speak maybe popped in on him a little bit. I don't want to get too crazy. They're still going to be freshmen. They're still going to make mistakes. They're going to miss a tackle. They're going to hopefully not blow a coverage, but you guys are going to like them in the future. I promise you. Strong words from Clayton White. And then, Chris, as you said, Pete Lembo backed that up, talking about the freshmen as well. Let's talk about Lembo. There's obviously some ongoing battles there as far as special teams go. But first, Chris, I did not tell everybody about our presenting sponsor. It's our buddy Clint Hammond. You can check him out at clinthammond.com. His NMLS number is 71597. Email address is chammond@mortgagenetwork.com. Phone number is 803-576-4450. If you're in the market for a new home, just give Clint a shout. He will take care of you as far as what is, sometimes a difficult process. Clint will make it easy. Appreciate Clint. Chris, thoughts from Pete Lembo?
Well, the first is what I mentioned. That stuck out to me and stood out to me. So I've merged them and said stuck. That definitely stood out. The other thing, Wes, let me make sure I get the quote right. This actually isn't a quote exactly, so hopefully I am getting it right. Third hand or second hand from Colin Taylor. Kai Kroger should be good to go, according to Pete Lembo. And look, it hasn't been expected that Kai Kroger was going to miss a really, really long time, but certainly any game you can have him available. The guy's a weapon. You know, we think of him. We know he's a good punter. We know he can be an asset on fakes, as we've seen. He's got a good arm, but also just holder. I said the other day on the Insiders Forum, I feel like by the end of the year that Shane Beamer is going to have one of his Parker White rants and Spencer Rattler rants if Kai Kroeger doesn't make the Mortel Award watch list or semifinalist list or whatever, maybe the subject of an epic rant by Shane Beamer. But that also, to me, you know, was pretty noteworthy.
Is that the Holder Award?
Yes, that is the country's best holder.
He is also on the Gamecock Central watch list for the best passing punter in
the country.
Okay.
Okay.
I was going to say in the history of football, but that might be a little strong.
We should put that list out, and it's literally just him. We don't even watch anybody else. He automatically wins.
We can do what we want, Chris.
I know. That's the beauty of it. If you make your own award, you can do whatever you want with it.
There are so many awards and watch lists now that we could.
But that was, I mean, really, when he's
talented.
The semifinalist list, I think, had 3 guys on it last year, and he wasn't on it. But
lame.
Did you watch the games?
They clearly did not.
That's one of those things that just people who don't watch the games vote on or put guys on a list, I feel like. But no, I mean, that was, look, whenever he comes back, if it is indeed game 1, which Pete Lembo said, that's a nice development for South Carolina because, you know, it would make, I think, Carolina fans feel more, they're already going to be uneasy. Pete Lembo said, hey, somebody's going to go out there and kick a field goal or extra point. We don't know who yet. He's not saying, not revealing it, but it will be somebody. And we do know that somebody will not be Parker White. Against all odds, I don't think, there's maybe a glimmer of hope that he's going to trot out there for year 7. But I don't think so, Wes. So it already makes Gamecock fans feel a little bit uneasy. Having Kai Kroeger back as half of that, you know, kicking unit, I think is certainly going to help.
Yeah, so this show is an educational show. Charles says you learn something new every day, like there's an award for the nation's best holder. You never know what you're going to learn on GC Live, but that's what we're here for. I got to say, man, Kroeger, and I've been trying to figure out how to say this without it like sounding like a shot at the other guys, but it's really a compliment to Kroeger. Like, I've felt like since this even became a thing, day 1 of preseason, the day before it started, actually, when we heard Kai Kroeger had an injury, you're like, most people are going to be like, oh, that's just the punter. But that's significant, in my opinion. And I know Pete Lembo, I know the coaches will have complete confidence or would have had complete confidence in somebody else if Kai couldn't have gone. Now it looks like he will go. But there's a reason Kai was going to be the starter. There's a reason he's as highly valued, I would say, within that building as he is. It's because he's good at what he does. So anytime you have one less thing to worry about on special teams, that's a good day for the coaches and for the coordinators. So we'll see if that is the case with Kroeger. Sounds like he's going to be good to go. Kicker battle. Do you think Lembo has to know who's going out there first, right? Internally?
I would think so. You know, and he did say, you know, a little coach speak here on probably with Pete Lembo that, you know, they're going to compete up until the last day. I'm sure that's true. Yeah, no doubt. But they've got to have a really, really good idea of who's going out there first. Yeah.
Agreed. And I think, and this is complete speculation on my part, Chris, other than the aspect of, okay, how do you perform in the games? Like, I think that's part of the reason this thing has continued is that what a kicker does in practice might be completely different than what he does in a game. And if it's this close, which it has seemed like it's been that close throughout, you kind of just want to see what does it look like with 80,000 people in the stadium. So I tend to think maybe also there's a possibility maybe one guy's more accurate, one guy has a bigger leg. Do you do situational things? It seems like Mitch Jeter has the bigger leg, has a stronger leg. I've heard the ball sort of pops off his foot, like it jumps which is a good sign. He's got some effortless length, which is always good. But, we'll see. My guess would be Mitch Jeter would be the first to run out there. But I guess we'll find out on Saturday, huh?
We will. And, again, just like you shouldn't discount a punter or Kai Kroger, I think Gamecock fans are aware of it and have talked about it enough, but maybe lost in some of the, many, many storylines coming into this 2022 season for South Carolina is just the absence of Parker White. I mean, when he went out there the past 20 years that he was the kicker, you would say, all right, here's probably 3 points, unless he's kicking from 58 yards or every now and then you get a miss, but you could feel really good in a reasonable distance in any situation that he was very likely going to come through. And that's a luxury for the team. So again, you can feel pretty good from a player standpoint if this guy has the ability to do that, but it's always different, getting in under the lights and getting into that game. It can surprise you in a good or a bad way. So you get in some tight games, you're going to need a field goal. You're going to need an extra point. So it'll be a storyline to monitor.
Parker was so good that if he missed, you were like shocked. And
yes. Oh, absolutely.
That's the best compliment you can give a kicker. I think you're not worried. You're like, oh, he's going to make it. And then he misses. You're like, must have been a bad hold. It's like, it wasn't his fault.
It was like when Rodrigo Blankenship missed that kick the year for Georgia against South Carolina. You're just like you could even Blankenship was just like, he was obviously upset, but he missed it. But I feel like his reaction was almost more like, I don't miss kicks,
Yeah.
Like,
what just happened?
Yeah. What kind of, a bird must've hit it or something, in the air. He's, he was money. And so that is a big, to say nothing of kickoffs and, directional kick, all those types of things, just field goals. I mean, could be important this year.
Let's say something of kickoffs. You said to say nothing of kickoffs, but let's talk about them. Has anybody been talking about the fact that Xavier Legette is listed above Juju McDowell at kickoff return?
Nobody has, but you have now. Congratulations. And
what did you think of that?
Hey, so the very first story that I heard about Xavier Legette when he got to South Carolina, you probably remember this, was, hey, there's this kid and he, this high school receiver. We all knew Xavier Legette was, and it was like, hey, this kid is raw, but he has a chance because, he's in practice and he was covering a kick, not returning a kick, but covering a kick. And just multiple people who were there like, daggum, look at that guy run. And so when you see Xavier Legette, he's this big, he's a big receiver. He's tall, he's physically put together, and he can run. And so makes sense. It is interesting, but it's not like, oh, I can't believe that. That seems weird, like Hayden Hurst fielding a punt, a little weird, it's not that. Little surprising. Yeah, probably so. But obviously they feel like he can bring something there, and he can definitely run. So pretty interesting move.
Yeah, I thought it was more surprising, not so much in that about Legette, but just surprising that Juju brought some juice to that position last year, was good. You kind of are like, all right, if Legette beat him out, it's not by default. Like you beat somebody out who knows how to play that position and play it pretty well. And I kind of wondered, are they just kind of want some more size at that position? Like Juju runs very hard, but you're getting hit by people coming downhill full speed while you're running full speed the opposite direction as them, like head on. Having somebody who's 6'2", 6'3", 220 pounds and can run, I don't know. He could surprise in that role, but he could surprise in every role this year. Like I think that's one of the guys I'm most curious to see, Chris. We've heard about the jump in practice. Does it translate to the field? There may be a lot of casual fans saying, wait, 17? Which guy is that? While he's making play after play this year. Like I could see it play out that way.
Yeah. I think everybody's kind of been waiting on Xavier Legette, like people who heard of his physical ability and have seen those flashes every now and then And there's just been, he's been behind guys or there's been some injuries. I think this is his time to step forward. And so really interesting that he may get that opportunity on Saturday. And certainly it looks like he's going to have an opportunity to play a lot at receiver too. Hey, Charles and Erlin West made a point about Dante Miller. What is Dante Miller's role?
It's a good question. We heard quite a bit about Dante early on in camp.
Like Dante is going to have a role, but again, that's kind of this point you go to where you're like, all right, you got a bunch of guys that you're like, you need to get the ball to this guy. Is Dante one of those? It seems like maybe so. Is it more on special teams? Is it more as a running back? We'll see. But that speed seems like something that you want to try to exploit.
The problem with we need to get the ball to this guy scenario is you can only get the ball to so many guys,
There's one ball.
So who do you emphasize? Like I'm sure you got a list. I think Dante's probably in there, but it will be very interesting to see as the year goes on right off the bat, what is his role on this team? Certainly a fast dude. You can always use speed, I think. Before we go any further, got to tell everybody about our friends at Liberty Tax. You can overcome your taxiety, 803-462-5576. We are, of course, in the regular season for football coming up. We're in the off season for taxes, but that's okay. If you own a small business and need advice, if you have bookkeeping and payroll service needs for LLCs, S Corps, and C Corps, Larry, my good friend at Liberty Tax, can help you out. They've got many locations in the Midlands. They've got a new one at 551 St. Andrews Road. That's by the Harbor Freight. They've got a Lexington office by Dunkin' Donuts at 1123 South Lake Drive, and in Irmo by the Kroger at 7467 St. Andrews Road. Again, 803-462-5576. Chris, let's talk NIL. We had Hillary Cox on earlier, 107.5, to talk about it. Everybody go check out that interview on 107.5thegame.com. Chris, I'm going to ask you what Pearson asked Hillary. What do Gamecock fans need to know about this new in-house NIL opportunities / situation that South Carolina student athletes will now be able to take advantage of?
Yeah, I like the analogy that Hillary had. So you've got this wheel and there's different spokes on it. Like think of a bicycle. NIL so complex, it's probably not even a wagon wheel. It's probably more like a bicycle. You got a bunch of them coming off. And so there's all these different arms of NIL. Our state law in the state of South Carolina was suspended back in July. Up until then, universities are really, really limited in what they could do on the NIL front in terms of helping create opportunities, facilitating. Once the state law was suspended, that opened the door for South Carolina's administration and programs to be able to do more on the NIL front. Now, they're not, at least yet, right now. Maybe this comes in the future in college athletics. The players are not employees. The university isn't directly contracting players to do things. But what they can do is help facilitate. So they've already launched the Gamecock Exchange, which is a two-sided marketplace where businesses and their own athletes can sign up, kind of match with each other. There's already the collective space. So that's not affiliated with the university, but Garnet Trust is a place where fans can basically become a member, subscribe, get access to content and experiences. And Garnet Trust turns around and uses those funds to fund NIL deals like the content and experiences. But another part of it now is something that South Carolina is on the cutting edge of, and that is this deal with Everett Sports Marketing. It's a marketing and agency that has worked with a lot of pro athletes, helps them brand, helps find them endorsements and deals. And so they have this exclusive deal now with ESM, and they're creating Park Avenue, which is going to be the arm. Basically, there's going to be employees dedicated to helping athletes brand at South Carolina and finding them deals to match with. So it's a different type of arm than the collective space. It doesn't compete with something like Garnet Trust. It's just another lane and another part of it.
Yeah, man. And I think this is the new reality for athletics. Many people have been asking, how can South Carolina compete in the NIL space? How can you compete with Texas A&M, oil money type donors? There's a lot that goes into NIL, and it's still a bit in its infancy, but I look at this latest news as the most comprehensive opportunity to date. As far as like having in-house direct sort of direct opportunities for the players, and you're going to have national businesses connected with this. You're going to have opportunities, especially for, I would say, not just your Spencer Rattlers, GG Jacksons. I think it's going to be huge for guys like that. It's going to be huge for guys like Nicholas Harbor. Let's be honest. If South Carolina lands a kid like that with the namesake he has, this matters in recruiting. But I'll be curious to see what opportunities this can create for your fourth leading receiver, for your backup left guard. I mean, I think being able to possibly find businesses that are willing to do group licensing deals and sort of give every kid on the team an opportunity is part of this as well. And I think it takes away a little bit of the guesswork for players. It takes away a little bit of the guesswork for companies. I know the job that Garnet Trust does, and I know that, it's all completely contracted to where the players are getting maximum value out of it. But you got to know whenever, especially at the beginning, if Garnet Trust contacts a player, they're going like, wait, who are these guys? What is this about? I think this is just yet another sort of opportunity for these players to be able to take advantage and know that it's something in-house as well.
Yeah, and I mean, a place like ESN that does this for a living. I mean, literally, their job is to represent players, market them, and to go out and find their clients endorsement deals. And for big names, you mentioned Rattler, Jackson, but also some smaller guys, maybe even some team-wide deals eventually come from this, Wes. They have those connections and they know how to get those things done. So up until now, in the kind of evolution and progression of NIL, really it's been up to players to find their own deals, or their agents to find their own deals, or entities like Garnet Trust or a local business to directly reach out to players. This is going to be able to unlock, I think, bigger deals, to be quite frank. I mean, we've heard, Wes, some rumblings of some potential, some well-known brands that are probably going to be jumping in to work with some big-time Gamecock athletes. And this is now going to be an example and something they can point to, as you said, on the recruiting trail. Hey, if you come here, can't promise you a number, but here's what some of our guys that are like you, this is what they're getting. This is what we think you can do. This is what ESM and Park Avenue think you could get. And that can make a difference for people who are really, locked in on NIL, which for the big time guys in recruiting, they are.
Definitely, man. Do you know an answer to this question, Chris?
Yeah. So on the Garnet Trust stuff, there's a little bit, my understanding from last conversation I had with Jeremy Smith over there at Garnet Trust, trying to resituate the shirt situation, but he's got to get some new stuff. And it just depends, Ryan. Sometimes a few days, sometimes a couple weeks, but I will send a note to Jeremy to get with you on that.
Yeah, appreciate you, Gamecock Ryan. We got to meet Gamecock Ryan at the Gamecock Central kickoff party. That was cool. Met Craig as well. Met a lot of Gamecocks. So appreciate y'all coming out for that. I think we're tapped out for today, man. I don't know. That's kind of it. There are plenty of final storylines to talk about the final 2 days. Might have a little bit of news for you for Friday's show here coming up soon. Maybe a lunch hour edition of the show. And tomorrow, again, like I said, we got a Georgia State guest who's going to tell us all about the Georgia State Panthers. So get your Georgia State questions ready so that you can throw them at him tomorrow. Brad says, just saw the game is on sellout watch. Yes. I don't know where you saw that, Brad, but whoever said it is 100% correct. Be on the lookout. I think it's going to happen. Sources say, I think it's going to happen. So that'll do it. Chris, you got any final thoughts, man?
No final thoughts, man. Let's save them for the next show if there are any left over.
We've been talking all day, man. So we're going to save them for tomorrow and Friday. Appreciate the support as always, y'all. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Again, happy game week. We'll talk to you on Thursday.